Ms Nandy is here with us now. Lisa, good morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme this morning. We'll talk about your new job in just a second. Could Christmas be ruined?
I really hope not. I mean, like every family around the country, I desperately hope not. But I think largely this is now in the government's gift. The vast majority of people, as far as I can see, are doing what is being asked of them, wearing masks, getting the booster jab, social distancing. My little boy's school has got its doors and windows open, trying to increase ventilation even in the cold. People are trying their best, but there are some big holes in the government's plans, particularly around travel. The experience of coming back as somebody who's just served as Shadow Foreign Secretary, I know this well, and taking a day 2 PCR test is very shambolic for a lot of people. The government isn't even checking up on the majority of those tests and whether people are getting them or not. And many of the companies that are supposed to provide them, they don't even turn up, people don't get the results. There are big problems here, and we need the government to step up and do their parts because we're doing ours.
We've heard from Nicola Sturgeon. She wants us to self-isolate for 8 days and then take a PCR test if we've travelled overseas.
I think the bigger issue actually is something that Yvette Cooper, who is our newly appointed Shadow Home Secretary, has been saying as chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee for some time. Why aren't we asking people to take pre-departure tests? At the moment, people are getting onto planes, they're flying back into Britain from many countries with very high rates of COVID, where there may be an Omicron variant. They're then getting off the plane and travelling home on public transport, where they're then asked to take a PCR test and self-isolate. That does leave a great big hole in our defences, and we've raised this repeatedly with the government for 18 months, and yet nothing has been done. We can't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. This is how we get the situation where, yet again, we're debating whether Christmas is going to be ruined or not.
The Omicron variant, though, might not be any cause for concern.
So I spoke to Jenny Harries, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, on Saturday evening, and I think it's fair to say that we just don't quite know enough about it yet. How much the jab actually works in relation to Omicron, how transmissible it is. These are all things that the scientists are working around the clock to try and work out. What we do know right now, though, is that the biggest variant in the UK, the most prevalent variant, is the Delta variant, the one that we've been dealing with already. We know that the vaccine is effective against the Delta variant. So I think the message from all of us across the political spectrum, putting aside our differences, is please go and get the vaccine, please go and get your booster jab, because that will make a big difference to the national effort.
3 more cases, I'm just being told, have been found in Scotland. I'm not sure about, what happened for them to be COVID positive, but it isn't necessarily a South Africa vaccine, South Africa COVID variant, is it? That's one of the challenges.
I think
we don't know where it's come from.
I think that's right. And actually what we do know is that countries that are better at detecting these things, that have better genomic sequencing in country, are the ones that are most likely to find it. So it may be possible, just as with the so-called Kent variant, it's likely that didn't emerge in Kent. It was traced in the UK because we've got some of the best scientists in the world and scientific facilities. So it is a problem, because by the time you discover these things, you don't know how far they've travelled. But I've been amazed, actually, having met with the scientists that are working on this all over the world, but particularly here in the UK, how sophisticated they are about tracking these things. The first 2 cases that were found, they were able to track very, very quickly how they'd come into the UK, how those cases were connected. I'm sure they'll be working on this now. And I think there's no reason for people to panic. Just do the right thing, follow the guidelines, try and be sensible, and let's get through this like we have done for the last 18 months. Let's get through this together.
One of the things the government is doing, and I'm sure you'll applaud them for it, is 3.5 million boosters or vaccinations and boosters a week is what they're aiming for, and they're hoping to mobilise an army of volunteers and NHS staff. Where does that then leave us, with your old hat on, for giving vaccines to other countries?
Well, we've got enough vaccines to make sure that the adult population around the world is vaccinated.
So why don't we give it to them?
Well, when I came here 6 months ago, that was the challenge. The challenge was to ramp up manufacturing so that we weren't choosing between vaccinating people in Wigan and vaccinating people in Wuhan. That's not the challenge anymore. The challenge is...
Not the first time you said that, is it?
No. But the challenge is I get Wigan into everything. Okay, I'm sure you'll appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the challenge is to get get them out to people across the world. And one of the problems they've had in South Africa, and particularly many of the surrounding countries, is that the healthcare infrastructure needs to be there. The vaccinations have to arrive quickly enough. Many of them arrive just as they're about to expire, so they simply don't have time to get them into people's arms. That's why we've been critical of the government cutting aid in the middle of a pandemic, because unless we defeat this virus everywhere, we're not going to defeat it everywhere. And the events of the last few weeks and the emergence of Omicron show exactly why that matters to people here in Britain as well as to people around the world.
Now, tell us about your new job. It's a new role?
It's a department that was created for Michael Gove in order to make good on the Prime Minister's promise at the 2019
Well, there was no
election.
shadow with Labour until now, is that right?
So we'd had various people shadowing the same brief, and what we've done this time is bring all of that together into this super department to really take on the Tories on this agenda. We've had 11 years of broken promises, 7 years of promises on Northern Powerhouse Rail that were just ditched last week. And I'm determined to make sure that finally, after a long time of people clamouring for change, that when people look to national politics, they will see a politician and a political party that is as ambitious for this country as the people in it and has a plan to match. That's my job. That's what I've been tasked with by Keir Starmer. And I think you can probably see I couldn't be more pleased about it.
Labour only ever wins an election when they're centre-right. Are you moving to the centre-right?
I mean, we're moving north, left, right, you can keep that debate. We're going out into the country and we're going to start delivering for people in towns and villages and cities that have been completely and utterly abandoned by the political system. You go to Grimsby, you go to Barnsley, you go to Aberdeen, you will find proud communities who have a contribution to make. But so often they're held back not by the skills of their young people, not by the abilities in those communities, not by their own ambition, but by a national government that isn't investing in the infrastructure that would bring good jobs and start to bring the spending power back so that young people don't have to get out to get on and we can rebuild our high streets and our communities. That's the agenda that will be the battleground for not just the next election, but for the future of this country. And I am determined that we are going to deliver on it.
Yeah, so Keir Starmer has, been slowly but surely getting rid of the left in his shadow cabinet. Where does Angela Rayner fit in this now?
Well, I would say...
Didn't even tell her that it was happening.
I would say to you, first of all, that I am the left. I mean, we're all the left. Labour are progressives and, we have differences of opinion.
Let's call you centre-left then.
Sure, but I mean, look, we have differences of opinion. Too often that's seen as a problem. I don't think it is. And in the last 18 months, I've seen Angela Rayner, who's our deputy leader, who is an incredibly strong woman with her own opinions, showing real authority and leadership in her role. And I've seen a leader in Keir Starmer who's completely comfortable with that. I can tell you from personal experience, he is not worried about being around strong northern women who have their own opinions.
He doesn't have a choice as far as she's concerned, because he doesn't decide whether she's in that role or not. One wonders why he didn't let her know what was going on.
Well, she was elected with her own mandate, that's certainly true. But I think there's been a huge effort on both of their parts to work together and to embrace the differences that they have. You can see that they come from very different backgrounds, very different traditions, very different parts of the country. My view is that's good for Labour. And, as far as reshuffles are concerned, I've been through a lot in the last 11 years. Most of them didn't end as well for me as this one. And I've never seen a leader who has held back from doing what he has so far always been he.
It would have been common courtesy, though, wouldn't it, to have let her know what was
going on? As far as I know, I haven't spoken to Angela, but as far as I understand it, he did let her know. I don't know when.
Not to the extent that he was going to do what, and he was being sacked.
But at the end of the day, Keir is he's our candidate for Prime Minister, and the gaffer picks the team. That's right. That's how it ought to be, and I'm just really pleased that he's allowed me to get out into the country so that I can start to stand up for the people that haven't had a voice in this system for far too long.
In the absence of the Shadow Foreign Secretary, who is David Lammy now, I think,
yes.
Talk to me about what's happening with Afghanistan, because it breaks my heart when I think about some of those people that we left behind. Well,
I suspect that you'll hear something from David Lammy on Afghanistan today, because it's an absolute passion for him. And when you look at those boats coming across the channel, one of the boats, the boat that sank recently, there was an Afghan soldier on that boat who had said he'd simply given up hope of a safe legal route opening up and Britain making good on its promise to protect and support people like him. We will not stop fighting for the people of Afghanistan who helped us over 2 decades. Our soldiers flew into danger in order to support those people. They stood with them for 2 decades. So we're not just making good on our promise to the Afghan people, we're making good on the promise to our armed forces who fought for the future of Afghanistan for 20 years. I'm now responsible for Afghan resettlement, and I can tell you that I'll be working with Labour councils and Labour mayors around this country to make sure that we give a warm welcome to those people when they reach the UK. And David will continue to fight the fight to make sure that we make good on our obligations. If Global Britain is to mean anything, it means we stand with the people who supported us over 2 decades.
Ms Nandy, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.